right now. So please accept that. We will not pull any video or vocal from the guests, just from Chloe and myself. So without further ado, hello, everybody. My name is Jessica Mitch Holmes. I am one of the co-founders and the CEO at Momentum. Momentum is a training company geared towards helping people change their careers and get into the tech industry. We work with companies and individuals and making sure that we are filling the gaps of what the companies need from a talent perspective and of individuals who are looking to get into the tech industry. And again, today we have one of our successful graduates, Chloe Mintel, who is going to talk to you all about a day in the life of her job as an associate software engineer at Insight Software. And before we get into kind of what her day-to-day looks like now, we are going to take a little step back. So Chloe, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm really excited to be here. For a little background, my name's Chloe. I graduated from ECU in 2016 with a background in art education and illustration, with the intention of being an art teacher. So I pursued teaching art and creating art for 5 years. Making art on the side, not professionally, but just that's always something I've been really interested in. And being really creative just in my life in general has always been a passion of mine. So as an art teacher and also as an introvert, a lot of times being an introvert and a teacher don't always mix super well. So if you are like if you are an introvert like I am, you will know how enjoyable it can be to interact with other people, but how draining it can also be after a really long time. And as an art teacher or any teacher, you're interacting with humans, small humans, or adults, or like any kind of teacher will interact with people all day. And as an art teacher, I was seeing many students a day. I would see 6, 7 classes a day sometimes, and it was so gratifying. I loved sharing what I loved doing with students, but over time I started to realize what an impact it had on my energy level. And I started getting to the point last January when I was developing all these relationships with students. I was at the same school for 4 years. And I got to the point where every day I was waking up and I would have to do these mental gymnastics to get myself ready for my day. And, I never knew if there was going to be, you could never predict what would happen that day. And I, as an introvert, I love talking to people. And a lot of times, if you meet me for the first time, if I'm very talkative, you won't know that I'm an introvert, but that is something that is part of who I am. And I started getting to that point where I was interested in a different career. And I won't talk too much about how teaching in general has become really hard for a lot of different reasons, but it has for many teachers, not just me. So, there have been a lot of people I've spoken to and teachers I've known who have pursued different careers. And I got to the point where I was ready to do that too. So I started looking at different job availabilities for teachers to transition into other careers. So I found this one podcast called the Teaching Career Coach podcast. And I started looking through all these episodes of this former teacher who became a career coach, and she learned how to coach teachers who were interested in other career fields. And she had a lot of really interesting podcast episodes about how to prepare your resume. And here is if teaching is not right for you, like here are some signs, or like, are you sure you want to leave teaching? And just all these really great resources and cool interviews with really neat people. that she had on her show. And one of the episodes that she had was about a software engineer who was a former teacher. And I said, that might be something that I could look into. And I have had people tell me, you have an analytic brain. This is something that maybe you could be good at. And I started doing some research, and I started looking at different boot camps in the area. And my fabulous boyfriend, who is now my fiance, he found Momentum for me, and he said, this is a program I think you'd be really interested in. So I started doing research about Momentum, and I was reading about the course of the program, 16 weeks, intensive, really successful graduation rates and job placement. And I was intrigued by the foundations course. So I said, you know what? I have nothing to lose. It's a free course. I checked it out. And if you don't know, the foundations course is a basis of HTML and CSS, and goes over, like, it has really fun interactive games. So if you're interested in that and you haven't done that, definitely check it out. That is what got me interested in CSS, which I still absolutely love today. CSS is really, really fun. And that was what really sparked my passion in software engineering, mostly with the basis that you can write a line of code and you can see something happen on your screen. I just thought that was so cool. But that's kind of how I got into Momentum, and I applied. I was very blessed to have the opportunity to be sponsored by Insight Software, who I am now employed at, and I love working for Insight Software. But Jessica, I know I got a little carried away there. I was very excited, but
thank you, Chloe, for giving your background. And I think so we were talking right before the session started, and the reason we named the company Momentum is after a quote that our director of engineering and instruction found by a 19th century educator, Francis E. Willard. And the quote reads, "The world is wide, and I will not waste my life in friction when it can be turned into momentum." And the folks that we work with, like Chloe, we're reaching that point of friction, getting up in the morning and saying, I'm doing all sorts of mental gymnastics to get ready for my workday. Maybe this is not the right career that I'm in. And those type of, personal reflections. And so going from, teaching, which I'm sure you are an amazing teacher, and you obviously had that as a career destination originally, but acknowledging when it was no longer serving you and when you were not able to bring your whole self to the job, and saying, okay, it's time to explore other opportunities that might be a better fit. And through mentorship and guidance and the loved ones in your life, you came to software engineering. So you decided to make the leap. You got a sponsorship through Insight Software. You started the program last summer. Can you talk to everybody that's tuning in about what is it like as an adult who has a degree in another field to make the transition, and what is the learning process like to learn to code?
That's a really good question, Jessica. So when you are an adult and you are in a career that you are not necessarily happy in, I think it's really, although it is scary, it is so important to remember that you're not stuck. You always have a choice. You always have a choice. And that choice could be really hard, could be really scary. You might have a family you're supporting and you're not sure, is it possible for me to make this leap? And while you are considering all those things, it is really important to also consider, does this make me happy? Can I give myself fully to my family and to the people I love that I'm also supporting in the career I'm in? Or is it draining everything out of me? Is it not fulfilling to me? That's really important also. So I just, as an adult who was ready for a career change, I got to the point where I didn't have a choice anymore. I had to look at other options. And, I was doing everything I could to stay engaged and stay positive and happy, as a teacher, but it was still really hard. And I loved the possibility of something new. That was really exciting. So if you are looking at career changes, whether it's software engineering or any career change, it's important to get really excited about what you're interested in. And that's how I knew it was right for me, because this is a career that I'm really excited about. And I love that I can learn new things every day. So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's the kind of advice that I would give everybody who out there is career searching. Just find what you love, that also you can reasonably, make a living and support your family. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely a point of advice. And that's one of the reasons we do the foundations course as well, which I have dropped the link in the chat for those of you that are interested in giving it a try. Like Chloe mentioned, it is a free course and it covers very much the basics, but what we're looking for is if you do it and you're still curious, you might be onto something. So check that out. So what was the process? So Momentum's course it's 16 weeks, it's full-time, it's rigorous. Talk about what it felt like to be in the midst of the course. What surprised you about the learning process? What was something that you might have said, oh, I was able to, like, what were your aha moments in the learning process?
So when I was in Momentum's course, I was very surprised, and this was something that I was prepared for, but also surprised at how fast paced it is. And you are learning something new every single day. And a lot of times, since I've graduated, even I don't think I was able to allow all the knowledge that I learned to sink in fully until I had time to process it when I wasn't in the midst of all the learning. It took time, and I'm still learning now, but it is very fast paced. It's very engaging. I found it really enjoyable. And when I was in Momentum, so the program goes, you have phase 1, which is front end development. You have phase 2, which is back end development. Phase 3 is your specialty. You choose either front end or back end. And then phase 4 is your capstone final project. So when I was learning front end, I was learning JavaScript. I originally did not like JavaScript. I was not vibing with it. I was really struggling because it took me a long time to have those aha moments. And let me tell you, as a person who loves learning, and normally things, when I learn them, especially, in the English side of things, I learn things pretty quickly, but this required a different part of my brain that I didn't necessarily have developed as much as other parts of my brain. So a lot of times it was like walking through mud, and I just was trodden through the mud. And a lot of times I'd have to call out, hey, I need some help over here. And then someone else on my team would come over and help me. And that is another piece of advice that I would give you guys if you are in Momentum's boot camp. Always ask for help. There are so many wonderful people and instructors here to help you and they won't always give you the answer, but they will give you the right direction and resources you need to find that answer.
That's fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about the final project? And so that's the first time that I always like to tell people it's a sandbox environment at Momentum, truly. But it is the first time where I think everything starts coming together in the sense that you're starting to see what it's like to build a full stack application on a team, using version control on a team. What was that process like for you? And how do you feel like, what did you take from that process that you can tell you use in your day-to-day life as a software engineer?
That's a really good question. So when it came to our final project, I was on a team with five other people. And for a final project team, that's pretty large. But it also means we had a lot of brain power. We had a lot of really smart, interested people in succeeding in making our final project work. And our project was, oh my gosh, it's just so funny. I haven't even talked about this project in a while, and I'm just giving myself flashbacks right now, but the Through Hikers Appalachian Trail Guide. And it was basically a guide to the Appalachian Trail for hikers to use, a mobile application for them to use to find shelters on the trail and resources on the trail. And we had some really cool features. There were also features we tried to implement that we couldn't make work in time. So, you have to really cut your losses at some point when it comes to your final project. But really, one of the things that I learned from my final project is you are working so intensely for such a short period of time that you have to remember that is not how it's going to be always. And I will tell you, I have not had to experience that much stress in my current job, but the experience of the final project was so important. And I am really glad I experienced that, because it kind of showed me what things could be like in a very high pressure, high intensity situation. And that's not to say, I mean, my experience as a software engineer now is different from other people's journeys too. So there could be, maybe there's software engineers working for the FBI that are experiencing extreme high intensity situations. I don't know, but I will say, from my perspective and how things are now, it is not as intense as the final project. So I'm happy to report that.
Yeah, we put you through a pressure cooker intentionally to make sure
Yeah.
that you feel confident once you get on the job. So let's shift gears into the job. And I will go ahead and tell all of our audience members, we're going to open it to Q&A soon. So go ahead and get your questions ready. Again, there's 2 ways you can answer them. You can come off mute and ask your question, or you can type up your question in the chat box. So go ahead and start thinking about your questions and getting it ready. And let's shift gears. So Chloe, can we start with, what is Insight Software, the company you work with? What do they do? And then what product are you helping build?
So Insight Software is a financial planning company, and we have, I believe, over 80 products that cater towards the needs of CFOs of many different companies. So I am specifically working for certain equity management. So I work on an equity management product, and I can't, for disclosure reasons, I can't get too far into exactly specifically nitty-gritty. But I can tell you that we are an equity management product, and I really enjoy what I do. And I've learned a lot about the financial world, actually, through the product. So usually we start our day with a stand-up meeting. I work on Pacific Coast time. So our stand-up, a lot of times stand-up is first thing in the morning. Mine isn't until 11 a.m. So it is interesting working different hours when most people are in California or Colorado, and I'm working East Coast hours. So that is interesting. But there were so many elements from momentum that I learned, just workflow, agile development, and that transferred to my career now. And so I think Momentum did a really good job preparing me for some of the things that I'm doing right now in my career.
Awesome. So, and you, if I remember correctly, you focused on the front end and you're doing front end work on this. So can you explain to the audience, like, what does that mean as far as how we all interact with the internet and with software? What part of that are you contributing to, without, going into details on the product, obviously, but just in general, right. What's the kind of work?
Yeah, so as a front-end developer, you are working on a client-side product. So you are working on the interactive aspects of a website or an application. So whenever you click a button, something happens. A front-end developer is responsible for that. And specifically, I am so lucky to be on my team, because as soon as I was put on my team, I was asked to do an entire rebrand, a CSS and less and SaaS rebrand. So all front end, styling aspects of a website. I was asked to do like the entire rebranding, and I was so pumped. And it's funny because a lot of developers do not like CSS. I love CSS, and I have kind of become like the person on my team, the UI person on my team, and I feel so lucky to be able to do that. But we also, work on JavaScript. We have our product is written in Angular JS, and another project I'm working on right now is upgrading from Angular JS to Angular, which is actually two different languages. Technically, they're different enough that it's a really long process for us to be upgrading our product to be written in Angular. So that's something I've had to learn as well. But yeah.
No surprising that the art teacher loves CSS. The team that you work on is really lucky to have you. To your point, most developers don't love that element of it. So that's really incredible. So we're going to go ahead and open it to Q&A. Folks in the audience, again, you can use the reaction button on Zoom to raise your hands to unmute and then ask your question. And then I'm going to be fielding questions as well coming from the chat box. And we're going to start with Gary's question. How do you compare your current position with what you're doing at Insight Software to your previous career? What are the day-to-day differences?
That is a great question, Gary. And honestly, it is night and day when I compare what I used to do with what I do now. As a teacher, I had a very strict schedule. I was expected to be at school at an exact time. And when I could leave, I was able to leave. It was very hard for me to take days off. I did have scheduled vacations. That was nice. But I was expected to have a very strict schedule. And in my career now, my schedule is a lot more flexible and up to me. So that allows more freedom for me to, do what I need to do when I need to do it. But it also requires a level of discipline for you to get things done on time when you say you're going to get things done. What I absolutely love about my job at Insight Software is I am able to work from home. I am sitting at my desk in my bedroom. My cat is on my bed. I can walk to the kitchen and get lunch whenever I'm available, like whenever I can. It's really nice. Again, that level of discipline is required to get your things done on time. But I love not having to interact with people all day, every second of the day. I love that. I love my team. I really enjoy how supportive they are. And from a logistics perspective, it is a lot easier to take time off. It is. I don't have to write a sub plan for my substitute teacher. I don't have to worry, is my classroom going to be a mess when I come back? Or the students going to be crazy because they didn't get what they needed to get done while I was gone? There were just so many concerns at my past job that I don't have to worry about now. And I do love that. So thank you for that question, Gary.
That's a good distinction too. I think that we see a lot when people make a career change, especially if you come from an organization or a career field that's really structured with your day, is the ability to work in tech. You have a lot of unstructured time, which means you have to have really good time management skills. You have to develop those or have those coming in. But it also, you just have so much more flexibility to get heads down and think in a creative way and not be dictated by a external schedule. So it's a good distinction. I'm going to combine the next two questions because I think they're pretty similar. So some context, Chloe was sponsored by her employer, meaning they funded her tuition and her experience, meaning she interviewed before she started Momentum with the employer. So perhaps we can take the next two questions are about interviewing. So if you can talk about two things, the first being what it was like to interview. How did you prepare to interview? And then the second is what the onboarding process, what was your first week like at Insight Software?
Okay, so I will start with that first part of the question. What was the interview process like? Like I did say before, I was blessed extremely with the opportunity to be sponsored by Insight Software. So my interview process was for the sponsorship and not for the job itself that I ended up getting. And while I was at Momentum, I'll jump ahead here for a second. I wasn't sure if I was going to be employed by Insight Software. All of us, all 7 of us who were sponsored, were not sure. So I operated under the impression that I might have to look for a job. You know, I could have been lucky enough to have been sponsored by Insight Software during my time there, and then they'll let me go and find my job elsewhere. But I was lucky enough to receive a job after graduating the program. But I interviewed for the sponsorship with Michael Teal, amazing man. He's a wonderful person at Insight Software. Very jovial, very passionate about what he does. And he asked me during the sponsorship process, you know, why I was interested in software engineering. Tell me about yourself. Tell me why you want to do this. So a lot of your typical questions, and we spent a lot of time just talking and getting to know each other. So I know a lot of interviews are not like that as a software developer. A lot of them could be technical. Some of them could be it could be more than one interview. So you could be doing 2 or 3 interviews. Unfortunately, I am not in the position where I can speak to that because I didn't go through that. But I will say I did refer someone for a different job recently at Insight Software, and they went through multiple interviews before they ended up, luckily, I mean, they got the job. So that was very exciting for them, but they did go through multiple interviews. It was not for a software developer position, but it was for a different position. And I'm sorry, Cassie, you're gonna have to remind me what the second question was.
So the second question is, if you could just speak to what was your first week like there? So once the hiring is done, you've gotten the job, what's your onboarding experience like?
My onboarding experience was amazing. From the Insight Software perspective, unfortunately, I did go through some family issues, some family emergencies. So I had to onboard a little bit later during my employment at Insight Software, but we have an entire week of welcome. It's so cool. And we have sessions every day of that week that we are attending to learn about the products, learn about the people, get to meet other people who are new. So it's just an entire week every month. They do this every single month for all the new Insight Software employees every month. So mine was in September and I ended up having to attend in October, but it was so cool. And the sessions were really helpful. And I felt like the individuals who prepared these sessions were really thoughtful about how they did it. So I will say 10 out of 10 onboarding process. I was able to meet all the people on my team too, my little team. And that was wonderful too.
Awesome. So another question is, so you've got the job, you've come out of training, you made a career change, imposter syndrome. How does it show up for you? And how do you overcome it or work with it?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So that was Mike Perry. He was also another Insight Software person. I'm sorry to call you out, Mike Perry, but I'm just so happy you're here. So imposter syndrome is one of those really hard things because I did come from a career that was completely different. And there are some days where I think to myself, who am I doing this? What am I doing right now? But the thing is, if you love what you do, sometimes you kind of forget about the imposter syndrome. And I don't know. I think that it's something I'm still battling, but it comes and goes in waves. It's not intense all the time. And, you know, pacing yourself, asking the right questions is really helpful. Finding a mentor or 2 on your team to help you out is really helpful too. So I have found But those things have really helped with my imposter syndrome, and just, kind of taking a breather and just reminding yourself you can do this. Graduated from Momentum. You're prepared, you know what you're doing. And sometimes, like, you fake it till you make it. Like, I do have to say that. Like, sometimes that's the way it is, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And the secret is everybody else is doing the same thing.
Yes, that's so true. That is so true. I
We're
try to
all
remember that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say, what elements of, so in regards to imposter syndrome or how you might feel on a job, in our training program, we really do try to create that sandbox environment where we're getting you ready for the muscles that you're going to need to use as far as asking questions and being uncomfortable with the unknown. Is there anything like specific that you run into in your day-to-day that you're like, okay, I've encountered this once before through the training that I went through, or, I guess, what are your aha moments when you have that feeling of I don't know, but you're able to tackle it and get to a knowing point?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So when I got to an aha moment was actually yesterday. So I will tell you guys about that. I had been working on we use Jira. For some context, we use Jira for our work items and organization. In Momentum, we used primarily
Trello.
Trello, thank you. I'm sorry, I haven't used Trello in a minute. But Jira we use for our work items. And there's this work item that I had been working on where one of the elements in our product, there is a date picker form. There's a little calendar icon. You click on the calendar icon, the calendar appears, you can pick your date that you want. The problem was that at a certain width, the date picker icon was covering the date. And it sounds so simple. It sounds very menial, but I had been working on this issue. We're trying to get to resize the form so that it was showing the whole icon. And I ended up having to go down this entire rabbit hole where I had to restructure the entire page of the form I was working on. And I talked to my Scrum Master. He is amazing. He has given me so many resources and he'll answer all my questions whenever he can. He gave me some really good resources, and I started yesterday just kind of like digging away at this problem. And one of the things that Momentum taught me is use your resources and do some internet searches. And I did a lot of that. I did a lot of internet searches to find out where the solution was. And you know what? That helped. And talking to my Scrum Master helped. And I finally figured it out. And I had to look back at a different source of the code to figure out how to structure things. So these are just issues that we're resolving from the rebranding. But yes, that
make you appreciate the internet so much more when you like.
It sure does. It sure does. And it took me so long to get to this aha moment that it was extremely gratifying when I figured it out. I had been working on this issue for 4 or 5 days, which is a long time. Like, a lot of the issues that I'm working on as an associate are kind of smaller, on the smaller side, so they don't take me as long necessarily, but this one's been taking me a while. I finally got it.
Sounds like yesterday was a good day for you.
It was a really good day for me.
Amazing. So we've got another question from Gary. The question is, do you feel like the industry, so that the tech industry, is unique in recognizing aptitude as opposed to immediate skills, so engineers get to work in environments that allow you to approach new horizons daily?
Okay, I'm going to read this question to myself one more time so I can fully understand it.
I think if I can maybe reiterate it, Gary, I think what you're trying to get at is environmentally, Chloe, like on the team that you work on, from your manager to the Scrum Master to just like culturally, do you feel that you are being recognized based off your aptitude, potential, and given room to grow, do you think, is that a true statement about your experience in the industry?
That is a true statement about my experience. Absolutely. I can only speak to the team I'm on right now. I am so fortunate to be on a team where I am recognized as someone who is new to this field, but I'm also encouraged to grow and learn as much as I can. I am given a lot of really neat opportunities to learn new things with this new project of learning Angular that I'm on. I have one-on-ones every 2 weeks with my manager, and he's very encouraging, and he understands the level I'm at, but he also is encouraging me to go beyond and keep pushing my limits so I can keep growing and, become just a software engineer without the associate, which is very exciting. We still got a ways to go, but we're working there. But yes, I am given a lot of opportunities to grow. And sometimes I do have to ask for them. Sometimes you are not given them right away. Sometimes you have to say, hey, I'm ready for this. I want this opportunity. So don't forget that too. If you are, you could either be thrown into too many opportunities it becomes overwhelming, or you could be given not as many opportunities as you want, and you have to ask for them. So you kind of have to figure out where you're at on that spectrum and what the environment is like. So you know what you need to grow.
Yeah, that's so true of everything in life. It's a two-way street. I think sometimes people, especially when you start your career, forget that it's a relationship like any other.
Yes, absolutely.
Good question, Gary. Do we have any additional questions? Anybody who wants to raise and unmute themselves potentially and say hello? Okay, we do have a question. Did you get any specific certifications, or are you being encouraged to get certifications by your employer?
That is a really good question. I have been at Insight Software for 5 months, and besides the required certifications by HR, I have not been asked on my team specifically to get different new certifications. That might change. And if there are some that you're interested in, I absolutely encourage you to pursue those, because even if you are not required to, it is still always great to learn new skills when you can. Right now, we're talking a lot about automation testing and how the developers versus the QA engineers, there's kind of a difference in knowledge between our two groups. So if anyone ever says, does anybody want training? I always say, yes, I would love some training, because it's always great to jump on those learning opportunities. And it also shows to the people on your team that you have ambition and you want to keep learning. And that's such an important skill in this career field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if I recall correctly, that question came from somebody who also wrote to us on Meetup and was specifically interested in, coming out of computer science degrees or the 4-year university environment where you're spending a lot of time in theory. What is it like, reality in the day-to-day? So could you speak to, obviously you're learning every day, you're an associate. How do you fit that in to the work, making sure you're delivering the work and you're also learning at the same time?
Yes, great question. So to jump to the first part of that question with talking about computer science degrees versus boot camps, I have done reading about other people's experience. I graduated from a boot camp, so I can't speak to the 4-year computer science degree experience, but I have read that a lot of times boot camp graduates, because their time in boot camp is so condensed and happens in such a short period of time, that the experiences you get are often the most cutting edge technology or software experiences that you can get, the most recent, the most current. And software is an ever-changing field. It is always changing, always moving. So a lot of times, from what I had heard about other people's experiences, if something you learn as a freshman in college for CS might not even be applicable anymore when you graduate. So as far as that goes, I think I'm biased because I love momentum, but I think a boot camp offers a really great alternative to going to college. And like, not that you shouldn't go to college, but that if you want to change your career, that it's a great opportunity. And I'm sorry, please remind me of the next part of your question.
Well, I think you answered it all, but the time and space, like learning is part of the job. So how do you think about in your day-to-day giving yourself the time to learn?
That is great. So I have been fortunate enough to be given a lot of time to do learning on my own. And I oftentimes, I would explore courses on Udemy. I would explore courses provided on Pluralsight, which is a website that we have a subscription to through Insightsoftware, which is very similar to Udemy. But what's cool about Udemy is you can buy courses and have them forever. So I pursued some of those courses, and just, if I had an hour or two during the day, I finished a work item, I can just go to Udemy and continue the course that I was learning. Did a lot of Angular learning to prepare for this project that I'm about to start working on. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So, but sometimes there are times where I don't have time for learning during the day, where I'm just working on a couple issues and just kind of trying to figure those out.
And figuring them out is learning too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it absolutely is. You learn in the process.
So we actually have a message that came in through text message. So I'm going to read this one from Daniel, and then we'll turn to you, Gary. I see you've got your hand up. So I'm going to Daniel's question. He said he's currently doing coding and Google data analytics to see what he likes more. As someone with no prior coding background, coding kind of seems like a foreign language with different terminology, functions, loops, strings, etc. On a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult would you say it is to grasp coding for someone with no background? And then a follow-up on that question. So he wants you to scale it 1 to 10 on difficulty. And then would you compare learning coding to learning a foreign language?
Great question. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think the answer changed a little bit every day. I would say on average for me, as someone who didn't have coding experience, probably a 7.5. It was not easy. JavaScript can be hard, and so can Python if you're doing backend. But I was thinking, I was given prompts before coming to this wonderful talk, and one of the prompts that you asked, Jessica, reminded me of what I wanted to say regarding coding being a foreign language, learning a foreign language. So Daniel, yes, it is like learning a foreign language. It is different in the fact that if you're learning JavaScript, it is in English, because like all the prompts, all the functions, everything is in English, but it is like learning a foreign language because words that we understand in English don't necessarily mean words in JavaScript that you would expect them to do, so it is, you have to learn what those words mean in a new context, in a context of coding. So yes, it is like learning a foreign language, and it does take a lot of practice and it takes time. And I said this at the very beginning of the conversation, but it took actually, Jessica, it might have been before we went live. It took me time after I graduated for all of the knowledge I learned in 16 weeks to really sink in. I have not done a ton, like as much JavaScript now as I was intensely for 2 weeks during our final project. It's been a lot more spread out because I have been focused a lot more on the CSS side. but the JavaScript I'm doing now, I understand a lot more than when I originally was in the fray of learning so intensely for 16 weeks. So it does take time, and it's almost like your mind has to process and kind of works in the background to let your knowledge sink in for you to understand it better.
Yeah, it's like tea. I tell people it's gotta seep.
Yes.
And oftentimes we have to, I think it oftentimes takes folks that have graduated from our program, the first 6 months into their job. And we always hear them come back and they're like, oh, I totally understand why you did this the way you did it. At the time, I hated it, but it makes so much sense now that I have that perspective and I've, been working for 6 months. So I am going to go ahead and let Jesse unmute and ask a question, Gary, because I've gotten a couple from you. So I want to just give some space and then we'll come to you. So Jesse, go for it.
Yes, I'm sorry. You mentioned website udemy.com. There's another one, another website. I didn't get the name of that for the learning. If you could put that in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. Please. Yes, it's called Pluralsight. I have not accessed it outside of my job. So you might have to pay for a subscription to Pluralsight. Yes, Michael Perry, Free Code Camp is great. Codecademy is awesome as well. Those are two resources that I definitely used as well. So yeah, you'll have to check out Pluralsight and see if it is an option for people if you are not employed by a certain place that actually purchases a subscription. So, but yes, Udemy is wonderful.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Jesse, Free Code Camp is definitely free. So I think Michael Perry put that in the chat. And then our foundations course, I linked again. Again, our foundations course is going to cover HTML and CSS, a wee bit of JavaScript. So it's really surface. So Free Code Camp will take you a lot farther, but we recommend those resources as well as you get started. And to Chloe's earlier point, if you find yourself really enjoying the tinkering, you're on to something. So enjoy. Gary, go for it.
Thanks, Jessica and Chloe. I didn't want to take over the Q&A session with so many questions, but the one I have currently is I'm totally enamored by UI UX and I'm very visually motivated, and so I've always just kind of loved like heavy ergonomics and things like that. But you mentioned about CSS, and I think Michael even referred to you as CSS queen. But what I wonder is with the CSS and the JavaScript and Angular that you're using, do you feel CSS remains relevant and will continue to be?
Absolutely. Some new skills I've learned at Insight Software include less and Sass, and those are related to CSS because it is my understanding that it's a pre-processing language that Sass is like CSS with functions, which is really cool because you can say, okay, an example would be if your screen is 600 pixels wide, this box is blue. If your screen is larger than 600 pixels wide, this box turns red. So that would be a very simple example of something that Sass could do. There's a lot of really cool functions you can learn. So that is a rabbit hole I've really dived into, but it is absolutely still relevant. So if you're interested in CSS and want to continue learning more skills, I would highly encourage you do some research into Sass and less. And I can send you some resources, Gary, too. Afterwards, if you're interested, just let me know.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'd love that.
Awesome.
All right. And I'm also, for those of you, if you're in Momentum's community, so if you're a graduate or current student, you can reach Chloe on our Slack. If you're not in the community, I did also reshare her LinkedIn, and I encourage everybody to connect with her on LinkedIn as well. So that link is in the chat. We have about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to go ahead and Chloe say, is there any parting wisdom, anything you want to share, and anything that you wish you would have known when you, I guess, last February, if anything you could tell your past self, that would be helpful for folks who are tuning in.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Pressure of wisdom that needs to be passed on. If you hate JavaScript, don't give up on it. You might actually love it. That's one piece of wisdom. It's going to be, if you choose to pursue this career field, it's going to be harder than you think it is, but it's also going to be a lot more rewarding than you think it is, and worth it when you conquer those challenges and climb those mountains. It's so fun, at least for me. And that's kind of how I knew it was the right field, because it was it's really fun to conquer those challenges. And again, if you love to learn, and if you love the idea of continuing to learn while you are on the job, then this is the right career for you, for sure. So I think I'm gonna part with those words. I feel like I've said a lot. I've talked a lot today. I've said a lot of things. So that's kind of what else I want to say.
Well, thank you so much, Chloe, for your time, for sharing your insights and sharing your journey on this career. I know that it's helpful to other people to hear somebody else who has made this epic leap and changed their career as an adult. For those of you tuning in today, we have another program at Momentum that starts on March 13th. Applications are still open. So go ahead, you can go to our website and apply if this is something you're interested in doing. We will make additional announcements as employer sponsorship opportunities come up throughout the year. So stay tuned. If you are curious about those, you can sign up for our newsletter. They come up sporadically throughout the year, so stay tuned for those opportunities if you want to apply for one of those. I encourage you to also follow us on social media so you can get some more announcements. We are hello HI Momentum on Instagram, Twitter, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn. And we hope that you continue to join us for this A Day in the Life series. We want this to be shaped by the people that come and tune in to get their questions and your questions answered. So continue to look out for more A Day in the Life events. We will have a few more, I think, are already on the schedule. So an opportunity to learn from people that have made this career transition and are working in the industry as professionals in tech. So thank you again so much for your time, Chloe. This concludes our session. I encourage everybody to LinkedIn with Chloe and continue to follow her career as it unfolds. Thank you so much, Chloe.
Thank you for having me, Jessica. This has been such a privilege. Follow me on LinkedIn if you want. I will see you guys around, and good luck with your future endeavors. I'm very excited for everybody who joined.
Thanks, Helen. I'm going to turn